Well, welcome. November 4th, 2020. Hi, my name's Tom Yakopin, and this is the Tom Yakopin podcast. Welcome today. I'm sure that you, like scores of other people in the United States of America, certainly here in Pennsylvania, are sitting on the edge of your seat watching this kind of Super Bowl of political positioning play out. We'll just keep it there. I know Melissa and I were up last night. We were considering going over to some friends were having a political rally or a party, and we just stayed home, built a fire, thought we'd sit back and see things unfold and see what happens. And of course, hopefully the campaign and the platform and the presidential candidate that we voted for, hoping that he would come through and all of that, as I'm sure you did. A couple of takeaways from yesterday, a few wins that I want to mention for the American people is what a turnout, okay? What voter turnout. And kudos to everybody of age who voted one time, hopefully. But kudos to everybody who got out and voted, who said, you know what, I'm going to be a part of the political process. I'm going to value the fact that I am in a representative form of government and can vote. So I want to thank you for that. I think that's a powerful takeaway on both sides of the aisle, Democrat, Republican, Independent. I mean, we were flipping back into between CNN and Fox News about every 20 minutes. We were getting different angles, different viewpoints. But in both cases, people were impressed with how vested the American people were in making their voice known, their opinion known through the vote. So I salute you for that. And hopefully your voting experience yesterday was a good one. Now, I realize that for people, Democrat and Republican alike, that this is the results and the way things are being handled. Very different. And I want to talk about an experience that a friend of mine witnessed firsthand yesterday, and I'm kind of interested in soliciting from you if you have any experiences that you want to share or anomalies that you want to share that were a little different than what you expected or a little different from something that you've experienced in years past. I'd love to hear. But again, kudos to everybody for getting out the vote. For those of you who are concerned about your candidate, whether it's Joe Biden and you're happy that he seems to be doing well, I'm quite surprised actually. And you're concerned about, a legitimate and proper transfer of power, I encourage you to hang in there. Whatever, pray for the country, pray for your candidate, for the process. Those of you like myself who cast their vote for President Donald Trump, the same. I question some of the things that I'm seeing, some of the reporting, some oddities last night. I thought, I find it interesting that Florida can so efficiently tally votes and submit them or upload them to the powers that be, to where, we kind of knew what was going on relatively early in the evening last night, although they didn't call it until very late. And yet some states, it's so inefficient, I had questions last night, like, there was almost no talk about New York at all, no breakdown, no county by county breakdown on how New York's going and what percentage of counties voted red versus what percentage voted blue. And I'm certain there had to be some people voting for Trump in the great state of New York. No mention of that, just boom, it's blue. Very similar with California. It's amazing how some of the reporting and how some of these states seem to have their act so well together. And then conversely, we've got Pennsylvania, we've got Georgia. As far as I know right now, it's 438, the fourth. I don't know that there's been a decision rendered on Georgia or North Carolina for that matter, or Michigan. So very interesting and somewhat concerning. I do know I've got, a lot of friends on the conservative side that have been suspicious of the need for these mail-in ballots, and of course these extensions that seem to be not only granted in PA. I understand they've got 3 days to count postmarked ballots, but I discovered last night there are several other states that grant themselves a fairly long period of time. If I'm not mistaken, in Ohio it was up to 10 or 12 days. I don't know. Just some things that I didn't learn, either I wasn't aware of or they're changes, okay? But no matter what, at the end of the day, I want to remind each of you to think through, okay, things and remind yourself that the President of the United States does not run this show. Congress runs the show. And maybe a victory for individuals last night on the conservative side was the fact that we maintained status quo in many respects and actually gained some ground potentially here in Pennsylvania with the state's attorney general, I believe, and then also I think Connor Lamb. And is it Sean Parnell? Yeah, I think it is Sean Parnell that is running against him. It seems as though Sean Parnell, Republican challenger to the incumbent Connor Lamb, seems to be doing quite well in the election. So a lot of good things happening. Hang in there. I do think counting all the legitimate votes is the right thing to do. And I do think that it is right to support and hang on to this process of a representative form of government, so hopefully we don't have the beginning of World War III or rioting in the streets and things of that nature. But let me tell you a little bit about what I do know occurred yesterday, and I thought it was a little strange. Went into the office and was having my cup of coffee, and one of my associates and friends there said, well, I had an interesting time voting today. And I thought to myself, well, I can't wait to hear what that sounds like. And she was saying how that she went in line. The line's relatively easy to navigate. People seemed kind, orderly, a little nippy out, I think, weather-wise. But, got in line, was maybe 2 or 3 people back from the gentleman in the front stepping up to register and do whatever was necessary to step into his polling place. And as he was giving the information that they requested, they said, well, sir, you are not eligible to vote in person in that you requested a mail-in ballot. And my friend was, listening to this conversation, although talking with another associate that she knew in line. And the gentleman responded and said, I neither requested a mail-in ballot nor received a mail-in ballot. Okay. And that was an interesting discussion. And the way that it apparently unfolded was the woman didn't know how to handle that. Another associate of hers recommended that perhaps she shut the computer down and reboot it. Perhaps she was getting a false read, as to his name, or I don't know what all could be going on. But at the suggestion of rebooting the computer, apparently it came up in the conversation that she had done this 5 times already. But my friend described what was unfolding as, probably very kind people, but older people right at the polls. And typically we do have older volunteers at the polls, but individuals who seemed ill-prepared. And there was a lot of ineptitude as far as navigating these technical waters, including that once the computer system rebooted, they were having difficulty logging in. And then they had to get the password, which my friend said was on a big printed sheet. And the password was enormous, for ease of identification. But oddly enough, everybody that was paying attention could see this. So it resulted in one of the poll workers suggesting that this gentleman, who had showed up to vote, and this was pretty early in the morning, doing his due diligence, right? A good citizen going, hey, I'm going to do this thing. Who knows what he had to overcome to get there. Goes where he's supposed to go, when he's supposed to go there, and is told, you can't vote because you requested a ballot. He didn't request it. They try and help the man. I'm not saying there was anything nefarious happening here, but they weren't able to help him, and it resulted in suggesting, why don't you go and come back later while we figure this out, okay? And we really thought nothing of it. I mean, we laughed about it, and I thought, it doesn't sound good. My guess is they're in for a rough day. This same friend of mine in the office suggested that one of the guys in the line said, hopefully the bar across the street is open because the workers are probably going to need the bar if this is an ongoing situation. But here's my concern with that. My concern with that is if it can happen once, it can happen twice. If it can happen twice, it can happen 20 times. If it can happen 20 times, it could happen thousands of times. And I'm wondering, with the massive amounts of mail-in ballots, ballots being requested, mailed, sent, received, whatnot, was there additional confusion? Has that created a very real problem that is now playing out November 4th and creating what for some is a very tense situation? I'd love to hear from you. Love to hear about your voting experience. I'm not saying that this is voter suppression. I'm not saying that it was, any kind of manipulation. I'm saying I think there was error involved. But there's a reason things happen. In my opinion, things like this don't just happen. And my concern is that it may have happened a lot yesterday. Another interesting thing that a friend of mine in Arizona, I went to elementary school with this particular gentleman, was telling me about was some ink challenges in Arizona. Apparently, there is firsthand reporting that individuals who went to the polling place in Arizona were given Sharpies to use on the ballot. And it has been discovered that Sharpies are not readable, that actually a pen, the ink in a pen is, the ink in a Sharpie is not readable. And actually, in digging down on that a little bit today, that's true. And so there were poll workers, and again, are they plants? Are they attempting, is this some kind of soft conspiracy? Or are they just misinformed poll workers who, of all things, they could have maybe they could have recommended a crayon. Maybe there's a lot of things they could have recommended. They recommended here they're passing out Sharpies, which are not readable by this scanning process. So you have people filling out potential ballots in Arizona that are getting no credit for their vote. That's an interesting thing. So here we are today. Perhaps for the first time in my lifetime, with the exception of the hanging chads, which was a disaster. For those of you that lived through that nightmare with Al Gore and George W. Bush, the hanging chads, it just seemed to go on and on forever. And my concern with as mentally exhausted as so many Americans are, and so many people looking forward to an answer, whether you are hoping for a Joe Biden, Kamala Harris presidency, or 4 more years of Donald Trump and Mike Pence. This is a stressful situation. And I just have to believe that we are better than that. And that, having 4 years between presidential elections to plan for these kinds of things. How can this happen in the United States of America? So I'd love to get your feedback. Visit us online at YouTube. Yakopinions, you can find us there, or the Tom Yakopin podcast, or on Facebook. I do a lot on Facebook. From time to time, I'll show up live there. You can visit us on Facebook, the Tom Yakopin podcast. Friend me. I'd love to hear your experience. If you've got something of value to weigh in on some, maybe you had a great experience voting. Maybe your report is, buddy, I'll tell you what, everything worked out fine for me. Okay. People were courteous and kind. It was efficient. I'd love to hear that. But I'm hearing a lot of strange anomalies from the field. And I wonder, is this a small isolated event, or are these events perhaps much larger than we know? I'd love to hear from you again. Visit us online or on YouTube. You can email, you can message me on Facebook, and by all means, stay tuned for more from Tom Yakopin, that's me, here on Yakopinions, or the Tom Yakopin podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and bye for now.